Have you heard of the trend of trad wives and trad husbands? If you don't know what this is a trend where men and women are living their lives according to traditional societal gender norms, supposedly from the 1950s, of the man being the main financial provider and the breadwinner, and the woman being the homemaker and fulfilling the domestic duties. And although this is a rather small trend online, it speaks to the growing phenomenon of people being dissatisfied with modern life and looking back to the past, whether that be 70 or 2,000 years ago, and saying that people back in the good old days were happier, they had more meaning in their lives, they were more disciplined and focused and more virtuous as well. And we're seeing a sign of this phenomenon in society by the increase in religious conversion, notably to Islam and Catholicism across the world. And also, this trend speaks to the supposed crisis in masculinity and femininity that we're seeing on the internet. But what does it really mean to want to return to a traditional way of life? And is this a new phenomenon? Well, here are 3 things from classical times, from ancient Rome, that I think about regarding a traditional way of life and traditional values. My first takeaway is that everyone throughout all of time struggled with their lives having meaning and struggled to find their place in the world. Many people writing or speaking about a traditional way of life and returning to this, they say that the modern world, people are particularly lost. It gives men and women no meaning, whereas back in the day, people had inherent meaning in their lives and daily tasks. But this simply is not true. If we look back to ancient Rome, many people struggled with meaning and with what their true calling was. I really enjoy the example of the poets Ovid and Catullus, both of whom were being trained for political roles and legal positions, and yet they abandoned this. They decided to write poetry instead, and they faced scorn for it. And also notably, the great emperor Marcus Aurelius, if you've read, as I'm sure you have, his meditations, he speaks openly about struggling with identity, with his vices, and with life as the emperor, his calling. So this has always been around, and a lot of these people calling for traditional ways of life nowadays, they say that when you read ancient works of literature, ancient philosophies, this should inspire you to be better as our ancestors were. But in reality, I think that reading these ancient works of literature allows us to empathise and to think that nothing has really changed. Men and women have always been the same, always complex, ridden with vice, struggling to do good and trying their best. And I think we should all read these texts to be able to be united by our shared humanity from ancient times to our current modern day. Number 2, something that I find very interesting is that many of these return to tradition movements say that what is necessary is believing in God and following a religion. If you don't do this, you won't be able to have a true meaning in your life. And I think that while religion does have good things, I think also it's been used as a tool of control, both in our days now and back in the day. If you look at in Augustan Rome, the Emperor Augustus greatly used religion and the gods as a tool to keep people subdued, afraid, and instead of encouraging them to be virtuous of their own accord, it encouraged them to be fearful of the consequences. And this is partly why the fear of religion, the fear of the gods, it made some books and philosophy such as Lucretius's work, The Nature of Things, which talks about how the gods perhaps aren't really that caring and they don't really influence us that much. This is why these books were so popular and so controversial as well, because it threatened the hold on power that religion had. My third and final thought on this matter is that when people say they want to return to tradition, they're actually meaning a return to simplicity, a return to a life in nature, and perhaps even a return to noble poverty. They're speaking about a family structure, meaning, order, simplicity, such as other Roman poets, Roman writers. They longed to return to a golden age, a sinless time where people lived in nature, they had their families, they had a farm, and almost as noble poverty, a small house, no luxuries. And I think perhaps this is more of the tradition angle that people are speaking about nowadays, a longing to go away from the horrible luxuries of the modern world, if you think they're horrible. These are just some of my thoughts, and I read a few articles recently about this, so I wanted to share some of my ideas. Do you have any opposing ideas, or do you agree with me? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.